And my dad started rolling around on my mind, which was very odd because I didn't think of him. I had made peace in my own mind and my own world with our relationship, so he just never crossed my mind. So to have him on my mind was very odd. And about 3 or 4 days later, maybe 5 days later, I got a call from my mom, and she said, well, I have bad news, and I hate to tell you, but your dad's dead. They had been long divorced, and I was the next of kin, so I'm the one that needed to handle it. And I said, oh, I wonder if that's why he's been on my mind. So I tracked him down. They still had him at the hospital. And he had set himself on fire. He was an alcoholic, drank amazingly incredible amounts of alcohol over a very, very long period of time. That's all he did was drink 24 hours a day for the last few years of his life. And he fell asleep or passed out with a lit cigarette in his mouth, and there was enough alcohol in his system that he sort of went up like a tiki torch. And the neighbors, literally, he was so polluted that one of his neighbors happened to be a nurse, saw smoke and flames coming from his place, and they went over, put the flames out. And the medevac helicopter was called. His entire body was severely burnt. It melted the zipper on his jacket. The flames were so intense and powerful. And he was hospitalized. He was intubated, which is a breathing tube. He was unable to speak particularly well. But at the time he was hospitalized, he started asking for me. When I spoke with the nurse who let him in, administered the intubation tube, and spent a lot of time with him, at the exact time, the nurse remembered him very much because they were trying to find me. We had been so estranged that no one knew how to find me. Plus, he always called me by my middle name, and nobody would have known where to find that person at all. The exact time that they intubated him and he started asking for me is the exact time my fever hit. The exact time that he died is the exact time that my fever stopped. So what happened on that level is my father and I were very close in a rather destructive way, but we were very, very familiar with each other's wavelengths. And it was very important to him in his spirit to call to me, and he needed to speak with me. He needed to speak with me before he died. And in his heavily medicated state, that's the best he could do. So his spirit reached my spirit, and between the two of them, the best they could do is I got to experience some of what he was experiencing. And after I came out of it, to understand that it was my dad. When I found out that he was gone, that he had left, I felt his presence all around me, and it actually completely freaked me out because I had never felt anything like that before. It was tangible. It was goosebumps up your spine. It was stop that. If it's a scary movie, it's the ones you get up and walk out. It was frightening. I literally believed that if I had turned around, I was going to turn around and behind me was going to be standing a crispy little man. It was terrifying to me. He was that real, and the presence was that close and that there. And this went on for a very long time until I finally, it was 4 or 5 days. I finally turned around and said, "What do you want?" And he said, "I only want to talk to you." And I was really surprised with that, to get a response back. I mean, I didn't expect a response back. And I felt him completely. Only it was the man that I knew, but it was more than the man I knew, and it was the different than the man I knew, but I knew it was my father. And I said, "Well, you're scaring me. Stop scaring me." And he said, I don't mean to be scaring you. I just want to talk to you, and I'm trying to get your attention." I said, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" And so we had a wonderful discussion where he told me about things that had happened in his childhood that I had no idea about. I later verified with my grandfather, his father, who was still alive. And we were able to make peace. But the most important thing to me at that point as well, because I had already made peace, is that he had made peace. He was raised in one of those religions that was very, very condemning, and that believed you were born in sin, you lived in sin, and everything you did was a sin on top of that, and there's no way out of the hole. You're just done. And then your children are conceived in sin, so you've harmed your children simply by making love and giving birth, and you're basically going to rot in hell. You're going to burn in hell, which is what he believed. And that's sort of the experience that he got to leave this life. He got to burn in hell, his own private hell. So that was one of my questions to him. I said, "So, Daddy, are you in hell? Are you burning in hell? Is it what you thought was going to happen?" And he said, "No, it isn't." And because I was curious about that, how much of our beliefs flow through, if we do exist after this, how much of our beliefs actually carry through. If you believe you're going to burn in hell, there's a hell created for you to burn in. And in this case, it was not. So we developed a very good relationship. And I still feel him, and I still talk to him, and sometimes he approaches me, and sometimes I approach him. So that was my first real adult, hands-on, grown-up, undeniable relationship with a dead guy. Previous to that, I was a teenager in all my teenage angst, trying to make sense of life. I mean, being a teenager is hard enough, and boys, and I was living somewhere I didn't want to live. My parents' relationship was getting even worse. I had a brother who was a few years younger than I was, who was perfect. He had no angst. He got along with everyone. Everyone adored him. He was handsome. He was talented. He was athletic. He was perfect. He was gorgeous. And I adored him. He was everything I wanted to be when I grew up. We were very different. And we had that age separation, and he was a boy, I was a girl. He was still a kid, and I was, of course, getting very mature. And so, we weren't playing together and talking together and like that. I was leaving one morning. I was in the band. I was a letter girl, and there was a big parade. And he came up to me. I was late. I'd forgotten something. I forgot my gloves or something. I'd running into the house, and he came up to me. And he sort of bumped into me. And we weren't a touchy-feely family. There was no bumping allowed, and there was no touching allowed. So he sort of, whole body kind of bumped into me, which was odd. And it definitely got my attention. And he said, "Hey, sis," which was the wrong thing to say to me. That's the way my father referred to his sister. I hated it. It was not the way that we referred to each other. He never had, and it was not like him to do that. So I stopped and was not happy about that. And I said, "What do you want? And why are you calling me that?" And he had this big, wonderful smile on his face, and he felt different. He was just over 11 years old. And he looked at me, and he looked at me square in the eyes and said, "I just really want you to know how much I love you."